I'd just like to start by thanking the Australian Wagyu Association for the opportunity to be here. I did speak a couple of years ago at the conference in Gold Coast, and it was such an amazing response from that outline. And I was talking about the future of where I saw assisted reproduction. So I'll just give a little bit of background on myself and what brings me and why I stand here today. So I've dedicated my career and almost my life to assisted reproduction technologies. I think the first time I looked at an embryo down a microscope was when I was 8 years old, and it was from that moment on that I wanted to make an impact in the industry, but not only at the seed stock level, but also at the commercial level. And it was through that I actually took the endeavour around fixed-time artificial insemination to the northern industry. And when I started that project, I had to do these types of presentations actually explaining what is fixed-time artificial insemination. And now it's really a common practice throughout the commercial beef industry. So standing here today for Nbryo, what we're trying to achieve is bringing embryo technologies to commercial cattle farmers. That's a very, very short snapshot, and I'll take you through that journey of how Nbryo plans to reimagine livestock breeding through embryo technology, and also how we will plan to take 7 years into 7 days when it comes to breeding. I think it's quite fitting that we're here with a theme conference of shaping a new age of Wagyu. So my presentation today will step you through why I believe that the embryo is where our production system starts. And the IVP, the in vitro produced embryo, is such a powerful tool in how we can reshape our breeding systems. I'll then give you a short snapshot about the company Nbryo and how its inception and where our vision is. And I'll also step you through some of the challenges of the industry, and I'm probably not going to tell you anything more than what you already know in terms of the challenges, but it really frames up why the embryo platform is so important for the future of livestock breeding. I'll then talk about why current breeding technologies take 7 years, and then step through the platform and speak about how that embryo platform plans to do that in 7 days. And then a little bit where we are now as a business. So why in vitro embryo production? So what's so powerful about that embryo? With the embryo, you can actually put prescribed genetics into a herd and multiply them. So you can actually predetermine the type of a calf that a cow is going to have. We can influence breeding decisions at the embryo stage. So we don't need to wait for a calf to be born on the ground to be able to do a genomic profile and then understand and make breeding decisions from that point. Obviously, there's a time delay for that animal to be produced on the ground, and also there's an expense that's taken to get to that point. And we know, and most people know, and particularly the Wagyu sector, who has a high adoption rate of embryo technologies in general, is that it rapidly increases genetic gain. Now, we have strategies out there at the moment, be it natural mating, artificial insemination, or even traditional embryo transfer, which most people now refer to as MOIT. But none of those technologies can do all of these things combined, and the IVP embryo can do all of these. So that's why Nbryo, as a company, focuses on the embryo. So a little bit about Nbryo as a business. So Nbryo is a technology company, and we're setting out to transform global livestock systems for the benefit of farmers, animals, and the planet. So Nbryo, I'm pretty sure, is pretty new to most people in this room. However, it did not just pop up overnight. So Nbryo actually came from the concept and the ideas which developed from the sister company Nbryo, where at Nbryo there has been over 15 years of commercial embryo transfer and genomics operations and R&D that's been associated with that. and approximately $20 million of founder investment that's gone with this. And from all those activities and the information that has been generated out of that, it was decided to create Nbryo as a business and continue the R&D pathway. The R&D has been funded well from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Meat and Livestock Australia to date, and obviously Nbryo, the business itself. Nbryo has a research network which expands globally, and we collaborate with universities, design engineering companies, and research organisations. So the industry challenge, and I'll thank my previous speakers or my fellow speakers earlier in the day because they've actually set up brilliantly for this talk. As I said, what I'm about to tell you is something that you're probably very aware of. The global livestock industry is very important and 2 billion people rely on it. It's a major contributor to the global GDP in many regions and countries, and it is a source of food security and human nutrition. But we do know that our industry is under threat. And it's under threat from the impacts of climate change and how climate change is then going to affect our breeding systems and our production systems. So we have to adapt to meet those. But also we're aware that we're actually contributing to the problem. Although I will speak to my other speakers before that said we can be part of the solution. And we also know that there's rise of alternatives to animal source proteins. However, there is immense opportunity. So globally, there's about 550 million commercial cows that need to get pregnant each year. Now, there's also a risk because if those cows do not get pregnant, there's significant issues around food security and reliability of production. Beef and dairy productivity has huge differentials within countries, between countries, and different production systems. So as an industry, and particularly within livestock, we need to be quite adaptable to change. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And we do know that the global livestock industry is contributing to enteric methane emissions, and cattle are a significant contributor of greenhouse gases. So we have the opportunity to be part of the solution to reduce emissions. So as I said before, my fellow speakers during the day, in particular in the methane segment, set this up perfectly for me. And there was many time-dependent targets and that our industry is up against. And climate is just one very perfect and real example that we talk about. Now, it's not only industry targets that have been placed upon us as an industry, but then there's also, we've seen, I think it was Professor Eckhard that put up the series of suppliers and processors that have mandated their own targets to become climate neutral. So really the message is business as usual is not actually going to get us there. We need transformational change that's going to allow us to be there. So for example, we've put these time-dependent targets like the CN30. The United Nations has signed an agreement to say that we will not increase global warming by 1.5% by 2050. However, just getting rid of livestock is not the solution because we need to maintain food security and feed the world. Now, we can bring this back. There's other time-dependent targets that obviously would be within your individual operations. These could be carcass attributes, it could be feed efficiency, it could be something close to my heart like fertility. I think everyone in this room can agree that we can't just sit around and go at the usual pace. We need to speed up our ability to get to these targets. It's not also getting to these targets, but we know our industry changes as well. And the breeding currently cannot follow those rates of change. I really like this graph. It came from a report that the FAO released. And it's about how the global livestock industry is going to mitigate methane to be able to meet the targets by 2050 with the Paris Agreement, but also maintain food security. So to my right is if we continued as business as usual, this is what the predicted methane levels could be. And then they looked at different segments and how they could be methane could be mitigated within each segment, providing a little bit of a roadmap, I guess you could say, through to 2050 of where we could be as a global livestock industry. I think it was Dr. Cowley that said earlier and was talking about the challenges around nutritional supplements and how we can scale them through pasture-fed systems. If we look at this report, it really highlights that the two biggest segments that are going to take us through to the 2050 is productivity increases and breeding. There are many reports that speak to this, but I would also like to note that these segments are based on current breeding strategies. So with technology, we could either increase the impact that these segments could have to the solution or actually speed them up. I am no genetics guru. My background is actually getting cows pregnant, so I'm pretty sure for some people would know a lot more about this equation than I in this room. But I just wanted to remind everyone that the rate of genetic gain is a function of selection intensity, selection accuracy, and genetic variance. So really we need to be able to be very good at selecting animals in a broad population. That's also a function of the generation interval, or the breeding cycle, so the amount of times and how quickly you can do it. So what we need is technology to be able to speed up those processes and meet these industry targets to influence the levers of these equations rapidly at scale. So not only do we don't want to just improve the rate of genetic gain within a microcosm of an industry, be it your herd or within a seed stock industry. We need to take those changes and then actually disseminate them and drive adoption through the industry. So the embryo difference. I think it was also mentioned in another previous talk about the rate of genetic gain that can be expected in a breeding operation. So existing livestock systems are reasonably outdated. They're slow and difficult to scale. A well-run genetic program generally offers between 1 to 1.5% change per year at best. So approximately, it takes 7 years to get 10% change in a trait or an index of traits. So it takes 7 years to be able to achieve the desirable outcomes with multiple breeding cycles. So this is really business as usual. So what if this could be done in 7 days? And this is where we introduce the Nbryo platform. So the Nbryo platform is a range of technologies that Nbryo has in development that will achieve some of these outcomes. I'll step through each of these pillars, but each of the technologies that's overlaid in the platform is targeted at being able to bring embryo technologies to commercial beef or cattle producers to make embryo technology more accessible and affordable. So identify. So think about the first step that you would do in any production or breeding operation, and that's the first thing you need to do is be able to identify which animals have the highest genetic merit for whatever trait it is that you're chasing. So with the embryo technology, we plan to be able to identify embryos in the dish, Now, some of you may be aware that technologies around this do currently exist. However, it's been likened to taking an axe to an orange to be able to take a sample of an embryo to be able to do a genomic profile. The existing technologies are difficult to scale and they're clunky and can't be done in real time. So with the embryo technology, we'll be able to increase selection accuracy, increase the selection intensity, and decrease that selection time, all parts of that breeding equation. Now remember, I said at the start of the presentation, if you currently, most operations need to wait until the calf is on the ground to at least be able to do a genomic profile. It's not only that time it's taken you to get there, but it's also the expense that's been related, and obviously that pregnancy could have been given to another animal that's of high genetic merit. So once we identify that embryo, with the embryo platform, we're looking at a range of technologies that will enable us to scale that embryo. So we select it and then we need to scale. And I think most people could understand in this room that generally by scale, it will reduce the cost of the embryo. Now, through a range of technologies that's associated around automation and biology, we will be able to scale embryos, and by doing that, and reducing costs and also having more of them, will improve the dissemination and adoption in the industry, which will then give the impact that the total industry needs. And it will also decrease that time for the industry to make a change. Then we need to deliver these embryos. And I think most people in this room, and there's definitely some ET technicians in this room, would know that they are a rare beast, being able to transfer embryos, and they're just really hard to access. We also know that there's huge variability from transfer technician to transfer technician. So Nbryo is also working on another range of technologies that will help or will facilitate and empower semi-skilled operators to be able to transfer embryos on farm. So this could be farmers that have skills and understanding. So this will not only, again, reduce the costs, it will improve the adoption and industry impact because we'll be able to get more of these high genetic or targeted embryos into production systems. That's going to decrease the time to make a change. And we're also working on a range of technologies around improving preservation because logistics is a massive issue when it comes to embryo transfer. And lastly, analyse. So analyse, we know that data is king, and this audience would know that more than any. So we have a data platform, we're building a data platform that underpins the whole technology from the start of the breeding operation to the end of the breeding operation. Not only will this assist in providing insights to increase our accuracy of selection, it can improve productivity, we can understand how the platform operates on farm, but it also gives entire system insights. So imagine if you were at the end of a supply chain, because of the data analytics and the embryo platform in play, you could have foresight of what's coming through the supply chain when that animal is an embryo. So that's the Nbryo platform, and that's where Nbryo as a business has been investing millions of dollars in the development of the platform to basically improve the accessibility and affordability of embryos. As each technology gets developed and commercialised, it will be targeting the goal of reducing that cost and improving the adoption of embryos globally. So where are we now? So we, as Nbryo, as much as we have a very strong R&D pipeline, from a commercial point of view, we're at the starting line. So in 2024, we're offering IVP services around ovum pickup, the in vitro production of embryos, and the transfer of embryos. We have just launched a trial ambassador program for 2024, where we're seeking entrepreneurial cattle producers that are willing to adopt the technology releases as ambassadors for the Nbryo platform. As each technology release comes to the market, we would then speak to these ambassadors to help us learn and train the platform as it gets commercialised. So please get in touch. We do have a booth, but we are right in the back hall. So if you do go out, turn right and head right to the back, we're in the middle. I will be around for the rest of the conference. I also have two of my colleagues here in Embryo shirts, Lewis and Hannah, and we would love to have a chat about how the platform could mean something to your business.
Dr. Sophia Edwards, we have a couple of questions that have just come through. One is, how many phenotypes and genotypes did you collect to accurately estimate EBVs of embryos during your selection process?
So we have not got to that point as yet. So as we move through to commercialising that technology, we will be looking at a range of markers that we can overlay into the platform. So we are just really the vehicle, I guess, to be able to allow that technology to happen.
Another question was, you talk about technologies that are able to do a lot of things. Are these technologies developed today, in existence today, or in the pipeline?
That's an excellent question, and that was actually a point I was meant to make on my last slide. So thank you for asking that question. So the Nbryo platform is in development. We have some areas of the platform are well underway. Some areas are still proof of concept, but as the platform gets continued to be developed and the R&D pipeline comes to commercialisation, they will continue to come through the pipeline and be commercialised.
And a couple of the questions have come through specific to the Wagyu sector. Is the technology tested in Wagyu yet? And is there anything particular to the Wagyu sector that makes the Nbryo platform more fit for purpose?
I think there's massive opportunity in the Wagyu sector for this technology. To answer the first question, no, we have just started commercial operations of where we are starting to enter into Wagyu operations. So we don't actually have that data yet. So I'm the first one to say we're at the starting line. But I see the Nbryo platform having a massive opportunity for the Wagyu sector because we're able to take prescribed animals and put them into any cow to have a calf. So this could be a composite cow that's tropically adapted to run in the north and has high fertility and adequate milk, producing full blood calves to then go into the processing. Another perfect example where it can be very powerful for the Wagyu breed is actually the dairy industry. So the beef on dairy has become a huge topic, and to eliminate wastage, and again, that would also improve the intensity of emissions, is that we could have Wagyu calves coming out of dairy herds that are going into that high-value beef supply chain.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Sophia Edwards.